If you work in Cubase and you wanna copy or duplicate stuff, there's different possibilities to do so. One thing I already talked about is the Alt modifier, which also works in the key editor. So if you hold down the Alt button and you drag, it will also copy the event. Otherwise, your Alt modifier will create a scissors tool. And in the empty space, of course, it will get a pencil, so you can work really effective by using your normal object selection tool and your pencil and your scissors, plus a copying function, only by pressing the Alt button. If you're here in your project window, there's other possibilities as well. For example, copying parts and events, or let's say duplicating them, works if you go to that tiny button here at the end and you drag it over. That makes as many copies of this part as long as you drag. A shortcut for that would be you select it and press Command and D for duplicate. So as long as you press that, you will always get one more. That also works for MIDI data. So if you select it and you press Command and duplicate, I mean Command and D, that will always give you one more copy of the MIDI data you selected. If you have a specific number of copies you want to have, or maybe you want to do it very often, then it is probably a good idea to use the event duplicate window. Here you can just put in a number. So if I want to have 22 of these parts, I would write 21 here, and that gives me exactly 22 copies of that event. This window can be opened by pressing, you select an event and you press Command and K. That opens the event duplication window. You can also put a check here to virtual copy, which means if you copy the event like so, and you make changes to your original part, these changes will be applied to your virtual copies as well. So Alt gives you a copy function that also works with the range selection tool. So if I select this part, I hold down Alt and drag it, this part will be copied somewhere else without applying changes to my original part. If I don't use the Alt modifier, another special function will appear. If I hover over that event and use the hand to drag this somewhere else, it will be automatically be cut, removed, and put somewhere else. So the range selection tool is actually a very good function. If you select anything and drag it somewhere else, it will be cut as well. If you use the range selection tool to select tracks. That is very easy if your tracks are small or if you don't have a lot, like I do. So if you just have these tracks, then it's not a problem at all. I used another modifier to expand my tracks. So if I have, let's say, used my zoom function to one track and all the others are small, and then I use it here and get that a little bigger, and then I go here and zoom on that one, and afterwards I want to have them all at the same height, I would go here until my mouse changes, hold down Command, and then afterwards if I drag up and down, all the tracks will be set to the same height. So if I have zoomed in like that, or I have a lot of tracks, let's say there's 60, 80 or 100 tracks, which can happen, then it is not easy to select all of them. So if I start here and I drag down and I have to wait till my mouse goes down and down and down and down, that's of course not a good possibility. So the other thing you can do, I will just decrease my zoom for that, is you take your range selection tool and hold down Command and Shift, and that gives you automatically a selection over your whole project, so over all the tracks. That might also be very practical if you are arranging something and you go like, oh, I have a part here in the beginning that I want to have in the end as well, or I have a verse or a chorus that I want to use later as well. You would just make your selection and drag it, copy it somewhere else. Another cool function is you use your range selection tool and you press Shift and X. That makes a cut to exactly that part that you just selected. That can also be used very effective if you have a part in your project that you want to remove. That you can do for one or also for all tracks. So let's say here is something in your project which you don't want to have anymore, and you want to have the data and also the time erased. That works if you press Shift and Backspace. That deletes all the data in between and puts all your parts exactly at that point perfectly together. Some other helpful tools regarding working here in your project window, mostly editing, is your scissors tool. I already showed this. You can use it with the grid or by holding down Command, deactivate the grid. So now let's say I have a part and I want to cut it in the same pieces, but it is really long and I don't want to make every single cut. So there is one cool function which you can use. You go to your beginning and select the first event as long as you want it to, let's say a bar. And now if I hold down Alt and press, my whole selection gets cut into parts that are all a bar long. So if I do that again with this part, I use my scissors tool and I make, this time I make a very tiny cut. So maybe about a 1/16 long. I go here with my Alt key and press. Afterwards, I have a lot of tiny events, all the same length than the first one that I selected. The same works for the glue event. So if you click anywhere, it will put that part together with the next. If it is MIDI events, it doesn't matter a lot. If it's audio events, it will probably create a container and part container where different events are in one part. So right now I have here my bar and here my 1/16 long events, which are a lot. And if I want to put them together, I can click and click and click and click, and it will always get one event more. But if I want to put all these together, then there's one possibility, like from where I am, everything that comes afterwards will be put together in one click if I use the Alt modifier.